Good. Okay, I'll kick off then, Dan, yeah?
Yep, go for it.
So hi everybody, thanks for joining. This will be a very short introduction. So my name's Joe Wilson, I'm the sales manager at MBA IT, and I've put this together with Matt and Dan. So Matt's one of our architects, and I'm sure Dan will introduce, and Dan is the sales specialist around VMware for Tech Data. So really, I'm not going to labour too much here. It's really an introduction to VMware Cloud Foundation. So pulling all of those different applications that are available via VMware Suite, as well as the integration of sort of that hybrid scenario when we can migrate out into the public cloud. So really just wanted to bring this to the forefront, obviously with the current times and everything that's happening in the world today. You know, hybrid cloud is something that we're seeing coming to the forefront of most people's sort of idea of where they're wanting to move their infrastructure with this sort of digital transformation journey that's happening. And I think more than anything, this whole scenario with COVID-19 has really accelerated a lot of people's thought patterns around going out to hybrid cloud and moving those sort of workloads out into the public cloud and keeping some things back locally as well. So that's really the idea of the webinar, is to bring you into an introduction of the VMware Cloud Foundation platform products. And what we'll do afterwards is obviously we'll catch up with you individually afterwards with any interest, and we can dive into a bit more of a deep dive session with both Matt and Dan if required. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Dan, and thanks very much for putting this together, guys.
No problems. Thanks, Jay. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Dan Hicks, Tech Data, with the VMware distributor in the UK. We were the first VMware disti. So, Matt, I think you've been working with the VMware team for 17 years now.
Yeah, yeah. You make me sound really old, but yeah, 17 years.
And I think I'm probably only a few years short of that. So, my role at Tech Data is a sales specialist. So I work closely with Jay and the guys at sort of making sure that they're enabled, aware of the products and the solutions that VMware are going to market with, and we support them on running things like these webinars. So there's a series of these that we've put together around some of the other technologies. So do make sure you engage with Jay, and hopefully we look forward to seeing you on those sessions as well. So that's me. I'm a sales specialist across the sort of the scope of both the technical and the sales side of things. Matt, a little introduction from yourself.
Yeah, Matt Carver from Tech Data. I run the enterprise software pre-sales team. So I cover a wide range of vendors, including VMware, within my team. My specialist area is VMware, as Dan mentioned. Which I've been doing for 17 years. I was jointly the first VMware trainer in EMEA, VMware certified trainer in EMEA. And I can say jointly because me and the other guy taught the first course together.
So you've got that experience around this, Matt, and you'll have seen, you know, it's a big shift, I think, from those early days of, it was probably GSX, I think, it was probably the early.
It was ESX. So
ESX. And we've seen those shift and change, so it's moved up. Really, this is the evolution of what we've seen from that early start point around compute virtualization, and this is the I don't think it's necessarily the end of the journey, but it's about as complete a sort of picture and a story as I've seen from VMware throughout the time that we've worked with them. So this is an overview of some of the new features and capabilities around VMware Cloud Foundation 4. The focus of this and I've combined a couple of decks here, focus of the content is primarily around modern applications. So that's the vSphere 7 stuff that you might have seen in the news, talking about the Kubernetes integrations that they've brought to the fold there, which you may have heard previously known as Project Pacific. Sorry about that. Project Pacific, or as it's now known, the VMware Tanzu project. So it's fully integrated as part of the VMware Cloud Foundation hybrid cloud platform. So modern applications, they're complex, they're distributed, you've got more users than ever, in particular in the current environment, more users logging in from different locations using more devices. Apps have started to migrate from being built in the traditional data centers to ones that are running on multiple clouds, some running in particular branch offices, but moving away from that centralized point to running around the edge. They're no longer those monolithic single build applications. They're distributed apps. They are microservices, and they're using data from lots of different sources. So they reside across lots of different types of infrastructure. So some of the challenges for these modern applications, and obviously we've got different types of audience here, but you could look at it from two sides, I think, really, Matt. First, from the developer, what they're looking for is that they're seeing that lack of modern developer services within their organizations typically. Their access to those modern tools and platforms and back-end databases is slow. Deployment, the day two operations of the life cycle management of those can be painful from a developer's point of view. Then on the flip side, and these are the people that I think you and I would more traditionally have dealt with in the past, Matt, the IT operators. And again, if we're looking through some of the things they're calling out here, deploying and configuring that infrastructure can be challenging. You've got these silos of infrastructure to pull together the storage, the network, the compute. There's the challenges of dealing with security of modern apps and having all of these databases in different locations, and then not having a consistent way of managing the operations across your traditional and your modern applications. Without having sort of that infrastructure in place that's going to help you adapt to that, developers and the IT guys are quite often at odds, Matt, I think, and they struggle to prefer, rather than working together cohesively to provide the value that those services are meant to deliver. You can find tension between the two sides there.
Yeah, so if we have to rely on the IT operations team providing the platform for the developer without using something like Kubernetes, then IT operations guys are constantly getting requests from the developer to spin up new virtual machines, maybe 10 copies of the same virtual machine if the developer wants to test 10 different ways of doing code, for example.
Yeah.
And then immediately tear it down again. It becomes a bit wearing for the operations guy. And also, as you mentioned earlier, frustrating for the developer.
Yeah.
Yeah. The developer is constantly waiting for IT to process, within IT's normal SLAs, and that's not what he wants. He wants to work at at the pace that he wants to work at.
Yeah.
So, which is why a lot of the developers go outside of the business and
you end up with that
shadow IT.
Shadow IT, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking at the traditional data centers, I think some of those key reasons you've got, they're struggling to keep up with the speed of the business in this situation, speed of those developers. So, typical data centers provide that trusted and compliant services within the organizations, but IT are finding it difficult to keep up with the demands of the business, or more specifically, I think those developers, as you're calling out there. But outdated systems and processes is limiting IT's ability to be responsive to those developer needs, those business needs and demands. You've then got the complexity. So these environments are typically very hardware centric. So it makes moving things, additions, changing things, patches, updates, the whole life cycle management process more complex. It can be pretty time consuming and disruptive. So infrastructure deployed in a disjointed fashion, not as an overall solution, I think is a real challenge there.
Yeah, I think part of that, I mean, stems back, if you go back to sort of 2003 when I started dealing with VMware and training it, we had the ability within vCenter to create a template of a virtual machine and roll that new virtual machine out in a matter of minutes.
Yeah. And that was an improvement massively on the traditional, I'm having to go and purchase a server, order a server in, build a single application on that single server. So it was a big improvement. But are you saying things have increased even more rapidly from that point on?
Well, the pace of change has increased, but the problem we've got is that allowed us to deploy the new virtual machine. What it didn't allow us to do is if we required a new network, new security settings to that virtual machine, it had to have different storage requirements. The storage and the network just didn't keep up. Yeah.
So it's slow. You're looking at sort of. It had a challenge at the time of being slow. Those were outdated systems, but again, the same problems occurring now as the pace has increased. It's limiting IT's ability to respond to those developers, to the business. You're having the sort of long and tedious provisioning practices. Businesses aren't necessarily able, in that if they're using those traditional data centers, to innovate maybe in the way that certain businesses that you look at and you see people that have developed that DevOps style practice that are looking to try and develop what their applications are doing, they're struggling there.
Even if you got your developers working outside and they develop a new application you want to deploy it in your data center, and it needs 3 different network settings, 3 different VLANs, that request goes into your networking team. Your networking team have to process it, set up all the firewall rules between and routing between those VLANs and things, and that can sit there for, in some businesses where they have strict change control, it might be sitting there for a couple of weeks,
if not longer. I think it was someone I was speaking to recently where, particularly where they've outsourced some of the parts of their business, parts of their IT business. So the networking might be looked after by a systems integrator who, they might not be the biggest priority for that systems integrator, and it can be, I said weeks. I think it was at the end of last week. I said it could be weeks before you get that response, and they've said, we wish it was. So I think that slowness is a challenge for people looking to try and move it.
Yeah, I think it's general overall speed to market for application, isn't it? And with those non-integrated systems and those individual teams that work separately from each other, without having that integrated solution, each team has to work simultaneously alongside each other, and to align all of that at once and make that, to enable that application to market, is obviously going to be time consuming, right? And I think, overall that's the challenge for businesses, isn't it, is to get those applications up and usable quickly.
I think you're talking about, time to market is something I keep hearing more, time to value, time to market, that you being late in this situation, being late now is considered far worse than being over budget. And again, I know budgets are important to all of us, but being late, the cost impact there, that's really where we're seeing the big impact. You've got the fact, as Matt said, things like shadow IT. So you've got challenges around things like compliance and security. There's a lack of security and visibility if people are going outside the traditional IT business to get things done. You've got those siloed components. But what we're seeing is that customers, what the customers really like about the cloud is not the cloud itself. It's not that, but it's the flexibility of the cloud operating model. And when I'm doing training with some of the guys out there, I'll talk about flexibility, so an ability to plan for change that you can see coming, but also agility, so an ability to react to change that you didn't see coming. So I think it's key that whatever sort of platforms that we start to transition towards, they have those they have the feel of a cloud. So it's got to be simple, quick, agile, things you can repurpose and change, and doesn't necessarily, you're not stuck to a rigid system. I think those are some of the key things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's the overall manageability, isn't it, of your platform, and having an integrated solution that enables you to have one pane of glass to manage everything in one place. Those things are what the market wants, isn't it?
I think this is, calling out an unnamed CIO, that they're looking for that complete, flexible, future-proof platform to build the business on. Well, from a VMware perspective, that response really is about offering future-proof, standardized and automated platforms which support all of those key IT areas and the business needs that are coming. It's what VMware are offering, and hopefully this should give you an idea of how they start to deliver on that. So when you're looking at a modern hybrid cloud, what you're seeing there from a VMware point of view, at the core of this is Cloud Foundation, and that is the traditional vSphere from the compute point of view. It is vSAN from a storage point of view. It is NSX from a networking point of view, and that's really at the core of the way they're looking to address the hybrid cloud. It's at the absolute center that we're seeing is vSAN and vSphere. So I do touch on that at the end of this, if I can make sure I don't keep the pace up for this. For those of you that have got vSphere in your environment, you have vSAN installed. It's part of the kernel of vSphere. It's a matter of turning that on with a license code. But I'd really encourage you, most customers that we've talked to are, when they're looking at refreshing their storage, when they're looking at refreshing their server infrastructure, they'll be considering HCI. Now, I've done some ones just over the last couple of weeks where I can really see even if I'm just looking at from a real cost perspective, vSAN's got a huge amount to offer there. Gives you great flexibility and choice. And then you build up into that full HCI stack covering the areas that I mentioned. And then if you're looking to really drive that hybrid cloud setup, VMware's integration with VMware Cloud on AWS. They now have similar offerings that have just been announced for Azure. Matt, did I catch that the Google one had come out last week, or have I imagined that? I don't know whether you will have seen it yourself.
Yeah, the Google one came out. There's a difference between the Google one and the Microsoft one, and the one we're talking about here with VMware Cloud on AWS. They all use Cloud Foundation
in their cloud. So in the Azure data center, in the AWS data center, they've installed Cloud Foundation as a platform. And that's enabling them to move the workloads back and forth as though it's an extension of the data center, if I'm understanding that correctly.
You do. The difference between the Google, the AWS one and the Google and the Microsoft one is the Google and the Microsoft one aren't owned by or managed by VMware. The AWS one is managed by VMware.
And the Microsoft one is managed by Microsoft. And I assume Google
obviously.
And I assume Google are managing their own. So
yeah,
it's really
Google and Microsoft were both built using Cloud Simple, which Google now own. Yeah.
So HCI should be I think is the default choice for storage that we're seeing out there in the market. And if I don't touch on it right at the end, we've got the capability working with Jay and the team, and Matt absolutely will look to support this. If you wanted to run an assessment of your environment and start to model what are some of the potential costs around vSAN for your environment.
The VOAs, right?
VOA and a vSAN is what I'd look at. So you've probably seen that since you last refreshed your servers, that the compute power of those servers has increased. Well, let's make sure that we're running, what's the capacity look like on that environment? And then let's look at the storage side of things and start to model. We're a disty for all the various storage vendors that are out there. So if you're looking to get indicative costs on a replacement of your traditional storage, we can absolutely go and work with Jay to get that. And then if we need to go out there and get, I did one the other day for vSAN where I looked at a HPE SimpliVity cost, I looked at a VxRail cost, and I looked at a vSAN Ready Node cost. So you had that comparison of a non-vSAN HCI solution, VxRail solution with vSAN, and the vSAN Ready Node solution. So we'll do the legwork, I think, is the message there to your customers, Jay. We'll get them the ammo, basically.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to understand that as a business, MBA as well are very agnostic in our approach to delivering HCI, right? And I think more than anything, what's important with HCI is to understand what workloads you've got running, and for more than anything, what I see as a massive advantage is the fact that traditionally you over provision as a standard, right? And with all these assessment tools that we have available now, we can actually align the correct infrastructure that you need to use and provision what you might need to use in the future. And scale out is really available here. And I think that's what's a massive benefit about either AWS, Azure or GCP, right? Is that you get flex then, and you don't need to over provision straight out the blocks, right? And that's really important about this stuff.
I found, and again, even though I'd always term myself as a salesperson, I really enjoy getting into the weeds with your customers on some of these ones and looking at, helping them build that business case, be part of the team that helps justify a decision and help the IT teams in particular go back to the execs in the business and say, look, we're making this decision and here's the reason why, and we can see this value. So
yeah, so really, it's modeling TCO, isn't it? And just getting an understanding of what you can put back to the business, right?
Yeah, I love doing that, which, it is, because if you're going to talk and you want to be confident and you really want to get the message out of this stuff, the proof's in the pudding, and delivering these solutions, seeing that return on investment, those are the things that really sort of give some power. So looking at the full stack integration of the HCI infrastructure, this is where it's layered together in Cloud Foundation. So in version 7 of vSphere, it's bringing together those native Kubernetes capabilities built into the stack. It's going to provide that automated single turnkey hybrid cloud solution. So it's going to help them manage those complex Kubernetes environments that the developers are wanting from that experience, but it's going to make sure that you can still manage that traditional piece. So it's going to help reduce the risk in terms of things like security and people going out and doing their own thing with shadow IT, but it also is going to improve the that operational efficiency of the teams, that they've got a common platform to help manage across that. Obviously, I think one of the challenges people will have is having in-house skills around these things. So if you're new to containers, if it's something you haven't thought about, or if it's something you're thinking about dipping your toe into, I think the message there again, Jay, is to engage with you guys. We've got teams that work in those areas. So if there's support that's needed, we can look at doing that. If it's, I had a customer the other day who was asking for, can we help them source some developers who are working in that space? And we were able to put them in contact with some people that could help. So,
those things are really important, and I think what Ground Roots, I think one of the main reasons where I think Cloud Foundation really helps businesses is that if you look to move into a public cloud environment, what you have to then do is go and learn how to develop in the public cloud, right? And I think that's where VMware Cloud Foundation really comes in and makes its play, is that fundamentally your VMware engineers that have been running on VMware historically for however many years are continuing in the public cloud to still see that same single pane of glass that they're using and understand how to build their environments in, rather than doing that natively. And there is something to be said about learning how to natively build up an environment in Azure, AWS. There is skill sets that are required, right? So I think that really plays a good part in the Cloud Foundation story.
Like that commonality of that. So as I said, the new pieces that we've really been the headline stuff that VMware have done a lot of marketing around this. It's the core of this is powered by vSphere 7, so the product map that you started with 17 odd years ago. But Cloud Foundation Services integrates that Kubernetes. It's using REST APIs, so enables you to drive API access to all of the core services. It's going to consist of two families of services, as you can see here. So you've got the Tanzu runtime services. So those are the ones that are going to deliver that Kubernetes deployment development services. They'll include an up-to-date distribution of Tanzu's Kubernetes grid. But then you'll also have the other side of that will be the hybrid infrastructure services. So it's going to include full access for the REST APIs, but will allow it to cross over from manipulating virtual machines, allow them to go and address those containers, integrate with the storage, the networking, all the core capabilities. So it's giving ease of access, Matt, into all of these different areas from a single, well, two sort of families of services, essentially. If we're looking at the vSphere side of things, you've got the vSphere pod services. So that's going to allow customers to run containers directly on the hypervisor for improved security, performance, manageability. You've then got the registry services, which were introduced as part of these hybrid infrastructure services, and that's going to allow developers to store and manage and secure Docker and OCI images using Harbor. You've then got the storage services, so that's going to allow the developers again to manage persistent disks for use with containers, with Kubernetes and with virtual machines. And then finally, the network services. So allowing those developers to get to the to the virtual routers, to the load balancers, to the firewall rules. There we go. So this should be an open industry platform for these modern applications. It should be developer-ready infrastructure, automated infrastructure, a universal platform. So it's something that you can address both the VMs and the containers. It will give you the lowest cost of ownership. So total cost of ownership, they typically look at a 28% reduction in cost over the three-tier infrastructure. Again, my suggestion here is always that we do the modeling, that we try and understand the benefits. I don't think necessarily customers that are looking to push their platform to support more modern applications, it's less likely you're seeing that pure cost reduction. But what we should be able to identify is a true increase in terms of things like the agility and the flexibility of the platform. And finally, because it's the same platform that the likes that you have in VMC on AWS, that they have in the Azure platform, and they have now in Google, it gives you the ability to move these workloads, move them seamlessly between your on-premise and the cloud. All roads, therefore, lead to Cloud Foundation. That's the logic. Whether a customer has started on that vSphere part of their journey and they start to look at vSAN, not everyone's going to look at getting to that nirvana in one go, though. What we're saying there is, if you started to look at vSAN, for instance, on top of your vSphere platform, what you should do is have confidence that it's giving you a route to something much bigger than just hyper-converged infrastructure. It does give you that capability, a vision somewhere that you're heading towards, and that those roads, as it says, leads to Cloud Foundation. So you'll see that there's a couple of ways that we're seeing customers do it. There are those that are looking to really quickly deploy new data center greenfield environments, and they might be looking at a fully integrated VCF architecture, and they're going in a single bang, they're going quick. Or we're seeing customers going on a journey and picking up individual products. Maybe you were a customer that started with vSphere, as I say, I call out vSAN as the primary one that I'm seeing most people do now. However, there's been a lot of people that have looked at some of the vRealize operation management tools as a potential stepping stone, and they're starting to improve the management layer. So there's lots of different ways to get there. But as they say, it tends to be that you're seeing you've got somewhere to go with each step that you take.
Yeah, just to add, Dan, I think that the whole product stack around VMware can be done. I call it a la carte, right? Where you can sort of pick those individual items inside the stack and move towards a more digital environment. And I think, like you say, the foundation of this will be vSAN and vSphere, and then NSX and vRealize are the things that people seem to add on later. And I think what we will be doing, Dan, is we're actually sort of breaking out individually throughout the next few months, aren't we? And just sort of breaking into each one of those elements.
Into these different areas, And I'm sure, the marketing team have pulled this one together at VMware, and it's something they're very proud of. But no one will be surprised with the first one, vSphere, being #1 market share for compute virtualization. But actually, I think there's some surprising bits in there when people look at they wouldn't maybe suspect that the #1 vendor for HCI is vSAN, and that's obviously
you wouldn't actually, no.
You wouldn't,
no.
Let's understand that number. It's obviously driven in a large part by the key integrations with, say, VxRail from Dell.
Yes, exactly.
But it's not in isolation. I've seen some really large deployments on HPE, vSAN Ready nodes. I've seen it on some of the I forgot the blooming name now. The Matt, what's the Super Micro?
Super Micro, yeah.
I've seen some Super Micro ones.
I think vSAN Ready nodes are the things that are really taking off. I think price to market is a lot on people's minds, and this whole patch management scenario that comes with these other solutions like VxRail and things like that. Those things are really interesting for customers, and I think we'll see a massive uptick in terms of people looking to try and have that automated patch management come into play now, with the fact that we've had this COVID-19 outbreak and people can't get into the data centers and things, and they'll want that manageability where they don't need to touch the solution to enable it to be updated. But I think the vSAN Ready nodes are where I see it picked up massively, right? It's easy for people to get those in place, isn't it?
The commoditization of the storage layer is how I always look at it, and it can be my working class background, I'd imagine, but I look at it and I go, I can't help but think, right, I'm seeing the great appliance solutions that are out there, and we supply a lot of those. But if I can look at commoditizing x86 servers and delivering something and really showing a cost benefit, I can't help myself, Jay. I can't.
No, that's right.
NSX, I just want to call out on the NSX side. A lot of people have seen that as obviously virtualization of the network. They see a key focus there around security. So looking at micro-segmentation, giving a per application firewall, making sure that you can protect the east-west traffic within your environment. Again, what I would call out there is, Matt, you were on a session last week where there is an assessment that you can do around NSX using vRealize Network Insight, I believe. It was at the very least. They've enhanced that now. So actually that assessment that you can run will help you understand some of the security stuff in terms of your east-west traffic exposure.
East-west, that's right.
Yeah. Sorry, I've got my mic on mute.
There we go.
The VMware Virtual Network Assessment.
VMware Virtual Network, and but they've enhanced that now, Matt, to include a little bit of the more funky stuff they've taken on recently. So SD-WAN from VMware, the Velo Cloud.
Velo Cloud,
yeah, that's actually part of the assessment now, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, so it can give you optimizations around that, and you can also extend your network assessment into things like Azure or AWS.
Was it distributed switches we were talking about before, Matt, that we
Oh,
need to have turned on? The joy.
Yeah.
But again, I think in those areas, again, the message there to your customers, Jay, is that we'll work with you to support them and make sure they can get these assessments. I do not like just try to convince someone by slideware that you should go with these solutions. But there's the opportunity in all of these areas. I think there's the opportunity for us as partners to help your customers understand the value of these different solutions and understand why are they number one in these areas. Well, let's see the products, let's build the business case, and then understand where they fit in.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you won't see a massive cost to get into it, if any cost to get into a place where you can give these type of assessments across your environment, especially pretty much anything other really than the NSX assessment is pretty much we'll be able to do that with no cost. There may be some time sort of costs to be able to deliver the NSX side of the assessment tools. That's what we're talking about, distributed switching and things. But those things can be put into place, and I think they're really important types of tools to use to enable us to show that TCO sort of back to the business. And without those type of tools, it's difficult to actually stand these solutions up and say the reasons why they're going to be worth implementing.
I think you've got, and I think that if I remember where I've sandwiched in the slides, I touch on some of the key bits and I can scoot through those around HCI. But that, in summary, when we're looking at what VMware Cloud Foundation 4 is delivering, it's that automated infrastructure. It's that developer-ready platform. It's helping bridge the silo, bridge that developer to IT silo. So you're not having to think about how do I support the guys that are running off on their own doing the containers, and how do I keep running with my virtual machines. Give yourself a platform that covers both of those. There should be that lower total cost of ownership than having siloed infrastructure. So as I say, I don't compare it to customers that are just doing VMs. I'd expect there to be additional costs in this sort of setup, but those costs should relate to delivering value. So if that is time to market with your applications, if it's enhancing, how do we all live in this new, the term I keep hearing, and I'm going to run out of brain power for it, is this new normal. So what does that mean? The new world,
just not the order.
New world. And I spoke to a customer last week. They're a drinks company, traditional shop stores. My question to them was, what sort of applications are you dealing with? And they're very much traditional virtual machines. Their end user experience, their customer experience is not application focused. So they haven't developed a mobile app. Well, no, that's not true. They did develop one, but they just didn't have the take up. And part of that was the demographics of their customers. They were, a more elderly customer base that weren't adopting those applications. But now we're in an environment where actually, would they like to revisit that? Because everyone's looking at how they engage differently with their customers. Maybe there's that opportunity now. So it might be the time. Yeah, go on.
So I think those two things are really important, and I think a big thing that comes up, and I think a lot of people sort of dismiss this, but the overall manageability, and then with the overall manageability of having everything in one place with one pane of glass, plus the introduction of the whole security edition that is built in with the microsegmentation, and if you dive into microsegmentation, and I know we're going to do that, Dan, right, in another webinar, but the fundamentals behind microsegmentation and you being able to put a firewall in front of every device inside your environment really does dramatically increase the security of your business. And it's just important for us to be able to try and relay that message across, that once you start doing these VOAs and these assessments and you start to see the return that you get in terms of the cost savings that are made with these technologies, that's when the business starts to understand the benefit of actually looking to implement these and change, right? And that's the biggest hurdle that I find that we come across.
I think there's a great opportunity to have that initial, like if you think about the building, I think for the most of the engagements that I have, it is the building block approach to something that resembles an on-premise private cloud. But if that first building block is vSAN, for instance, I think there's a real opportunity, as I've said a couple of times now, to show some real cost benefits there just off the bat, right? Where we start to look at it and go, let's show and demonstrate this saving, and then let's use some of that saving that we've made. Let's not just take the saving away. Let's think about how you as IT teams could use that to maybe layer in some additional functionality for developer style interfaces to, you know, I can sort of see that story building up of going, let's start with something like vSAN and let's use it to build. But it could be that you're looking to really quickly deliver a new data center, and at which point I think Cloud Foundation absolutely has something there. So looking into the Kubernetes side of things, let's just remind ourselves we've got that full stack HCI platform for VM and containers. We've got modern infrastructure for these modern applications, and it's going to help those customers, I think, as we've just said, develop those new applications and microservices. And, you know, I think we've all been coping with getting people back to remote working, etc. But if we don't use this time to try and think, do we need to do things differently? I think we'll be missing out as an industry, and collectively try to help businesses and help help them deliver on outcomes maybe that they haven't thought about before. Oh, there we go. That keeps coming up. So if we're looking at the actual sort of building of this platform, Matt, you've got across those different areas, the developers looking at all of these different services, the IT operators being the ones that are wanting to make sure they have a consistent way of managing this platform, which should ensure that we can improve the economics. So from a sort of a cost point of view, it's going to help them consolidate all of the different ways in which maybe they've been going off and doing Kubernetes in different areas, but enable them to run the virtual machines and the container workloads. It's going to give control back to those IT operators, so you can secure the workloads, you can make sure you've got the right resources allocated to developers, and then you can start to give different access to different business teams and different developer teams. And then finally, the speed, you know, that increased velocity, accelerate Kubernetes, accelerate the way these applications are being deployed. And I think it's, you know, as we digitize business and we start to think more about what's the experience that we have digitally with our customers, the speed at which you can improve that, the speed at which you can enhance that, the businesses that are really going to thrive, I think, moving forwards are the ones that are able to adapt quickly.
Yeah, I think some of the reasons why we can do the first two on the previous slide is we have within that platform, the developers have the tools that they natively want to use. So we have a fully compliant Kubernetes grid, etc. Which they can use all the tools that they would want
using if they were going out there and doing it themselves. So they're not being restricted in any way there.
What we have from the operations side is we have the same platform they've been using for a long time. So it's all managed through the vSphere client interface. Yeah, so the new HTML5 web interface that they've been using in the past few versions. Very familiar with people that have been working with VMware for a number of years. And the economics is we can run these two things side by side without disruption.
And if
on the same platform,
you know, if you're in that role of traditional VM admin, etc., it feels like this is an opportunity for you to try and maybe branch your skill set out, be an agent of change within a business. You know, if you could look at this, it's tools that you're going to be tools that you'll be comfortable with, but maybe you could be an advocate of that. Whereas I don't think in the past you'd have ever found VMware admins saying you should go have a look at Kubernetes business owners. Whereas this could be an opportunity for them to, with confidence, go out there and say, have we thought about doing this? Is this an area where you'd like us to look at as a team?
Yeah, so if you're sort of, IT operations director, something like that, or a manager in that area, you wouldn't be saying it in the past because you'd be going, I don't want to manage that, my team to manage that, and that'll be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's integrated, your team have got the skill set to be able to manage the vSphere side, and that's all they really need to manage.
I think when you've just on this very pertinent slide to that point, that all of the different roles that you might have within your organization. So the C-level is going to be demanding that drive for innovation, I think, even more than they ever will have done in the past. Responding to change is absolutely going to be essential. Remaining competitive, to not being able to change, not being able to adapt quickly is really going to be a pressure point for lots of organizations. So that is the demand coming down from that C-level.
I think a lot of them are feeling it right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The IT director is still going to be concerned about things like improving the operational efficiency, because that's pretty much their live and breathe. How can they make this stuff more efficient? They need to deliver on the service level agreements that they've got. They need to reduce risk, but they are the ones that really need to make sure that time to market for whatever IT are delivering that is delivered, and that's that value.
So if you look at a couple of things on there, the reducing risk, they would have wanted to bring the shadow IT in. They would never have been able to meet the SLAs of the developers.
Because you'd have ended up putting restrictions on those teams that were so restrictive that they couldn't, that you slowed the time to market and the time to value that the application people were demanding. Yeah. Three common use cases. So the ones we've focused on, as I said in this session, were around modern applications. So looking at cloud native development, looking at Kubernetes, giving a way of moving things up to the cloud and back again, really driven by that sort of hybrid cloud mentality. So all the different public cloud platforms that really support VMware Cloud Foundation mean you've got those options. And finally, it's that general push to data center modernization. I think the first one of those, Matt, on the left hand side, is the one we've traditionally focused on. It is, come to us with your hardware refreshes, tell us about your server and storage opportunities, tell us when you've got a VMware renewal. VMware renewals are actually a great opportunity for us to make sure you haven't got licenses you don't need. Let's make sure that if you have got VMware licensing, that it's the type of solutions that will deliver the most value. So maybe we can run a VOA for you just before, give us a run up, make sure we've got some time to be able to help you build a business case, but maybe 3 months before your renewal date, or come to us and say, well, let's look at this. Let's make sure you're running that environment efficiency. There's new licensing models from VMware that might have come up since you purchased those. You've got things like remote office, branch office licenses, where it's licensed on a per virtual machine basis. It could be that you want to talk to Jay and the team about having some sort of, either a subscription, managed service style engagement, those sorts of things, where speak to Jay, bring us in as part of the team to look at what you're doing around VMware renewals and see if there's an opportunity there.
VSAT as well, the new assessment tool.
VSAT, yeah. So VSAT is a very simple tool where, first of all, actually, it's a very good point, Matt. Make sure that if you are running VMware vSphere, that if you are running version 6.0 or below, that is no longer supported by VMware. So if you're renewing your support and you're running 6.0 or below, you will not be getting support from VMware. You have to pay for extended support. It's about £250,000 a year. So make sure you've upgraded. Make sure you've got to at least 6.5. Most people are on 6.7. Version 7 is obviously going to be 7.0. So I expect we'll have a bit of a delay there before people move to that.
Just to add to that, Dan, I mean, we have the facility and capabilities to be able to assist you to be able to do those upgrades on your environment. So it's just a case of really just coming in and talking to the team, to your account manager, and we'll be able to assign engineers to come out and do that work for you if you need that, right? And I see that some customers do and some customers don't, right? So it's just really a question that we ask you, and you can come and ask us.
Yeah, VSAT is a tool that will help with that because it's quite a rapid assessment tool that tells us what you've got. Right, so what licensing have you got? What hardware it's running on? What other products are plugged into it? And we're able to utilize that tool to work out, what steps would be needed to upgrade, whether any hardware is falling out of compatibility and would need to be replaced, things like that.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's a tool we should definitely. Well, we are using actually. We it's quite new though, isn't it, Matt? From my understanding.
Yeah, it was launched in sort of tail end of March.
Pretty lightweight, gets it up and running. You get your results pretty quick, but it gives you a quick idea of, what will be your challenges be if you're upgrading.
Do you use that, Matt? Do you use that in line with the Live Optics tool then as well? Do you run the Live Optics simultaneously with those tools to sort of understand everything and balance everything then, or is that when you're doing the work primarily you're doing it just around VMware?
It depends what the objectives are with the assessment, but yeah, we would tend to run the VSAT tool regardless of whether the customer's looking at upgrading or not, just because it catches a good overview of their environment.
What I'll do is, there's not too many, I've only got about 4 slides left, but I've got 3 slides here that are on these 3 areas, and actually these are the ones that I'd quite often work with you on, Jay, and share with you, but I thought they'd be really useful for your customers to see them, because think of it as a virtual conversation. You can have a little look through these. So from a data center modernization point of view, maybe it's that managing traditional architecture is complex and slow. It could be that your legacy infrastructure is too slow or not performant to the application demands that you've got. Maybe patching and maintaining the infrastructure is becoming too operationally inefficient. So it could be that, in particular now, where you're finding people that are having to self-isolate or not going to work, that it's becoming a real challenge. How can you ease the level of effort required to do that? Server storage, refresh, purchasing, expansion, or aging servers. Again, let us help you make sure you're making the calculated and understood decision about your next platform choices. We really enjoy doing that, and as I say, we're the largest in the UK for all manner of technologies. So, Jay's got access to all my different specialist teams, my peers and colleagues, and actually things like Zoom mean that we can really collaborate to help support you moving forwards. Shrinking IT budgets, limited IT staff, again, absolutely relevant to the things that you've seen at the moment now. From a modern application point, it's difficult to manage both those traditional and modern applications with the same tools and processes. This gives you a way of managing both of those. Developers gain access to resources via inefficient ticket-based system, reducing productivity. The example Matt spoke about earlier, where people are putting those requests in, that isn't the way that you're going to be able to run a true DevOps, build it quick, break it style environment. Inefficiencies in operating and patching legacy and containerized applications, very difficult. You've got those two streams of having to address that. New applications are being deployed in clouds that IT doesn't have control of, so the shadow IT issue that Matt brought out earlier. And also that lack of control is not just the security bit, but Kubernetes sprawl. In the same way we saw that concepts around like VM sprawl, same problems come and revisit us again, this time in the Kubernetes space. Hybrid cloud. So if you're looking at deploying those new workloads that require federation, cloud repatriation, the cost of public cloud might be too expensive. I've had a number of cases where customers have moved workloads up to the cloud. They haven't done the full investigation of what that might mean and entail, and they end up with the concept of bill shock, and they get that first bill in and understand all of a sudden, that workload wasn't the most suited for it.
And the ballooning cost, right? The ever expanding cost of cloud as well when it's turned on, right?
Some great solutions there around, say, VMware's Cloud Health, helping people manage the costs on these. So again, I think, you know, there's a new acquisition every other day, as far as I can tell. Carbon Black from a security perspective with VMware. There's lots of tools out there. So guys, if you are seeing announcements about VMware, my advice is reach out to Jay and the team and let them. We've got access to a lot of these things prior to them coming to market. We get training on them in advance, so my technical guys are up to speed. If there are areas of interest, the cutting bleeding edge, absolutely reach out to the MBA team and they can help you there. Increased security challenges with managing both the private and public cloud environments. Maybe you're having difficulty managing workloads across the multiple clouds, too many tools and silos. So previously I would have said your silos in IT were network, compute and storage sides of things. Actually, it starts to be my Azure team are a silo or my AWS team are a silo. Well, this gives you a way of bringing those things together. And having all of those things separate, and I always like to have this image, as you have more silos, as you have more pockets, it increases costs in all different areas. Cost and complexity, I think, is those two things being inherently linked. But that increased complexity invariably means increased cost, particularly in the space of things like business continuity and disaster recovery. So a real challenge there. And last but not least, I wouldn't be in sales if I wasn't calling out some of the stuff that's available from VMware. If you are interested in Cloud Foundation and you were looking at starting a new data center, building a new environment, VMware have got what they call a Kickstarter bundle for 8 CPUs. It's offering about a third discount, giving you VCF standard, giving you HCX, giving you a virtual center. Great way of starting if you've got a little 4-node environment. Great way of starting that off. So if anyone needs pricing on that, again, speak to Jay. I had to get a sales pitch in right at the end, Jay. So
of course you did.
That guys is the session. Thanks for joining us. I don't know if there's questions there from anyone.
I've got a question actually for Matt. So interestingly, just when customers are watching this, Matt, and just to give them a bit of an understanding here around actually what is required to get into a hybrid cloud scenario. So if a customer has, let's say, HCI on-premise today with vSAN ready nodes, wants to do some disaster recovery over into AWS or into Azure, what is the actual track to enable them to be able to do it? I'm assuming we can, using this solution, the idea of this is that we can, instead of using native tools inside AWS or Azure, we can spin up our VM environment over there and have that as a DR solution fundamentally. So, I mean, is it a requirement for you to have NSX? Is it a requirement for you to buy Cloud Foundation to get into AWS or Azure? What's the sort of situation with that?
Well, you can put virtual machines into VMware Cloud on AWS or VMware Cloud on Azure without having Cloud Foundation. The advantage of having Cloud Foundation is if we look at some of the components we've got in there, so we've got vSAN, that allows us to create a storage profile for the virtual machine. So basically say what its requirements are, so the level of availability, level of performance that we want. And if you set that up on your VMware Cloud Foundation, when you move that machine in some way into VMware Cloud and AWS or into Azure, the storage profile will go with it and it will conform to your requirements. Mm-hmm. If you've got NSX as well, so we looked at NSX, there's several things we can do with that. So one, we can create a security profile, right, around our virtual machine. So we can wrap a layer of security around it when it goes into VMware Cloud on AWS or on Azure. That security profile goes with it, and the same level of security. So, as we migrate it, it's not exposed. Plus, we can also extend our networks that exist on premise because we've got NSX. We can extend our layer 2 networks that exist there.
Stretch layer 2 clustering over into AWS or Azure. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So we don't need to change our IP addresses for failover. It's just up, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. exactly. So we can do that. It's just that without that functionality that's available to us with Cloud Foundation, which brings in all of those different elements of the product set that give us all those additional features that you wouldn't get if you didn't have Cloud Foundation, right? Dan, in terms of licensing, if a customer has, so I'm always interested to talk about ELAs in this scenario, right? Because is it called, are they called ELAs now with VMware? Yeah, they are, enterprise license agreements. So someone that's sitting on vSAN ready nodes today, there's always needs to be a new purchase to get onto an ELA if you don't have one. And the advantage of doing that is quite a significant discount, isn't there, aligned to getting onto an ELA?
Some of the key benefits I would always call out. You don't typically get a discount on the renewal of your VMware licensing. So an ELA gives you the ability to get some additional discount off the renewal of what VMware call your install base. So the licenses you've already got. Obviously, it's the highest level of discount that you'll get on new products in that fashion. An ELA also gives you the benefit that as you deploy more pieces of software under the ELA during the term, and the term of an ELA can vary. It can be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. I've seen up to 5 years.
I've done 1 5-year one. Most of them are 3 years.
Most are 3 years. Most are 3 years. But if you deployed a license in the middle of that ELA, it will co-term. It will end to the end of the ELA. So you're not ending up with your licenses at many multiple points throughout the period. So a bit of a benefit there, I think. What other ones do you get around the ELA? It gives you the ability, if you've got customers that are looking at global deployment rights, those are things that can be looked at with a VMware ELA that you can't look at with a typical VMware purchase. And there's real flexibility. You can buy, products within an ELA, or you can invest in sort of tokens that enable you to purchase other products using those tokens. So there's a number of ways of getting there. And I think, again, one of the things I'd call out are the assessment services being a great way of driving forward a need. And if you've got that need, you can then justify that net new purchase.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up then, what we're saying is that to go forwards and look to align VMware Cloud Foundation essentially means that you're aligning all of those different product sets that we previously mentioned, and you're buying a license for each of those when you buy Cloud Foundation, right?
Absolutely. It's giving you across the full software-defined data center stack. You're covering yourself. Everyone that has got vSphere out there, it's starting to go, right, have a look at vSAN, have a look at NSX, look at the automation that can be done with vRealize. It's that software-defined private cloud in a box, I think, is the easy way.
And if you purchase that licensing, but obviously your environment isn't ready to deliver against NSX and the other options that are available, does it kick in from the day you purchase it, or can it be sort of, how does that work?
You as I said, you can take a sort of a la carte approach with it. I would, make sure if you want the hardware in to be able to support the various solutions that you're putting forwards. But I'd look to build out, most customers that I see building out start with vSAN and they build out from there. That's the most typical approach.
Good, thanks very much. Okay, guys, well, thanks very much for coming on today. It's been really informative, and I really appreciate it. As we said, we've got a run of these coming up. So I think we've got HCI, NSX, and we're doing SD-WAN with Valo Cloud, aren't we? Those are the things in the series. And what I'll do is when I publish the videos out on our channels, I'll publish all the dates for the additional stuff that we're going to run as well.
Super. Look forward to it, Jay. Matt, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks very much, guys, and thanks for everybody that joined on the guest. Thanks very much, Ted.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.